Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctors as they travel the dark times and arrive in episode 481, where we don't have to worry about Dalekula, because we have Hector, the best companion ever. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Pretty good. How about you?
Not too bad.
Guys do anything fun this week? Anything fun, exciting? Watch anything? Read anything? I've been reading like crazy.
What you been reading, Glenn?
Well, I've been really excited because of the WandaVision TV series that's going on now. Everybody knows about. I went back and started picking up some old, and a lot of these I'd read back in the day, but I started picking up some of the Wanda and Vision story arcs from back in the day, and I've been reading some old West Coast Avengers comics that involved them, and then moved on to the Vision series, which is really, really good. And then I was just scrolling through some stuff after that and got recommended a Black Widow comic called Deadly Origin, so I went ahead and read it too. And then to prepare for something we're going to be doing coming up, I went and read the first volume of the 13th Doctor's comic series. Of course, and then I finished reading that Daleks magazine or bookazine that I picked up. I think it was back in November. I finally got that finished too. So lots of stuff. I didn't watch much.
Reading.
Yeah, but reading a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, lots of comics.
How about you guys? You guys do anything?
I did not. My cousin is in town visiting, so we've been visiting with her.
We continued our Criterion watch with the Philadelphia story, which is one that I've seen, but it's been so long I really didn't remember much.
I like that. Cary Grant
and Katharine Hepburn and Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
It is a quality program. Takes its time getting there. For being such a, they give you the setup and you go, well, of course it's going to be this. And it takes a long percolating while to get to this, but then it does, we end up with things as they should be.
Right.
I enjoyed it. Mel liked it too, so that's always a plus.
Anything else?
Yeah, that was it.
Well, let's move on to news.
Watch my Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Let's see if they can clinch it when it actually happens.
Yep.
I know, I'm a little worried about Tom the cheater Brady.
Ooh.
I know, them's fighting words.
Not from anybody here.
Not from anybody here.
Maybe some listeners.
I don't know.
Glenn's over there nodding in agreement, and Keith's going, what's a sports ball?
Who's Tom Brady? What? That's two first names. Ugh.
Never trust a man with two first names.
Keith, what do we got in the news?
News, Doctor Who Season 24 coming out on Blu-ray. That is Sylvester McCoy's first season.
Which is what it'll be called in the U.S. when it eventually releases here.
Sylvester McCoy's first season. Time in the Ronnie, Paradise Towers, Delta and the Bannerman, and Dragonfire.
Did you guys watch
no U.S. release date yet?
There's no UK release date yet either.
That's true.
Did you guys see the trailer?
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Oh, it's good. It's got Bonnie Langford in character. And the premise of it is it's kind of almost like a Shark Tank. That's what we call it here. I think it's Dragon's Den over in the UK, but the same concept, but with the investors that are going to give money to somebody that has a good idea. Well, she's kind of a solo investor in that. It's called 24 Carat, I think, because she's it sets it up as she's been this head of some carrot juice conglomerate, so she's made a lot of money from that. And but it has people coming in to pitch their ideas, and it's different people from those seasons that are still around. I think one is Paradise Towers. I think it's one of the gals that was one of the girl gang gals. I think she's one of them, and she's pitching reopening Paradise Towers. The guy that played the bad guy in Dragonfire, and I can't remember his name either, but he's also pitching an idea in relation to that, and then another mystery guest comes in, and of course it's really well done. You guys should watch it because it's really cute. They did a nice job with it.
I think it's
Is one of
interesting in the
them-
bonus features. It's listed as Blu-ray trailer, a brand new mini episode.
Well, they kind of are mini episodes, to be honest.
They are, yeah.
Is one of them that one woman from the episode Delta and the Bannermen who talk like this?
No, but I did see on the trailer they have an interview with her, and she says something to the fact of, after all these years, why would I have thought to go with a Welsh accent?
Oh, hindsight.
That's good. I'm excited. I mean, let's see. Although
There's
I
got a
don't
lot
know,
of bonus features on this one. It's an 8-disc set for 4 stories.
yeah. I don't even know that we've got a U.S. release date for the Pertwee one that's coming out in the U.K. next month.
I don't know if we do.
It might be June, now that I think about it. So let's see if that one's in. Let's see, the Pertwee one comes out in February. So this McCoy one will probably come out late in the year. I'm guessing probably August, which means we would get the Pertwee one here in June and probably the McCoy one near Christmas, is what my guess is.
Is season 4 the one we haven't gotten yet? Or is there the other one?
Pertwee? Yeah, it's season
Yeah.
4, I believe.
We are 2 Pertwees behind now because didn't they just announce the first season of The Master?
No, I'm sorry. That's the
Or
one.
that is
that's,
season
that's,
4.
No, that's not season 4. That's
That'd be season 1.
no, that's season 2. It's season 2.
Oh, yeah, you're right, too.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry, American season 2.
Yeah,
right,
it's
I'm
American
with you. I'm
season
caught up
2.
now.
Yeah. It would be UK season 8. So
Pertwee season 2. Okay.
Right.
I thought maybe so then to date that would give us, assuming, I'm not going to assume, when these all come out at the end of this year, we will have had 2 Pertwee,
Yes.
2 Baker,
3 Baker.
3 Baker, first, middle, and last.
Yep.
2 Pertwee, 3 Baker, 1 Davidson.
Yep.
1 Baker the second,
Yep.
and now 2
Because, yeah.
McCoy.
It'll be 2 McCoy.
Yeah.
Which I find is interesting, although I'm sure they're trying to pace it out in a way. They must have an idea how to do it. But it's interesting to see that we've gotten 2 Pertwees before we've gotten another Baker, Colin Baker, or another Davison, which I think since those
there's only
seem
2 of Colin Baker they can do.
That's true, but that seems to be the more popular doctors. Maybe not Colin, but Davison for sure. So I'm a little surprised that Pertwee's higher on that list of them. But
I wonder how much of it is also, they're filming a whole bunch of new bonus features. So how much of that is just availability and getting it produced?
that's true. And also I wonder if part of that's they go back and do some Pertwee because we're going to have some actors and actresses that won't be around anymore soon. And they maybe want to get enough of those people, interviewed and archived and that kind of stuff too. So that might be why they're in a rush to get Pertwees done.
Considering, this is the anniversary of the Master, it makes sense to get that season out.
That's true. In fact,
Well,
I bet that played a lot into it.
Isn't there just simply more seasons of Pertwee? Didn't he, American-wise, wasn't it 5 seasons worth of Pertwee?
Was it 5? I thought it was only 4.
No, I think it was only.
Is it only 4?
Yeah,
it's still more than the other guys. So, I mean,
Except for
obviously
Tom.
Baker's the juggernaut there. So
Well, that's true.
it makes sense that we get more of him. But then I would think that, with Colin only having the 2 seasons, that's kind of a short end of the stick twice because we're going to give you one early and then one late.
Right. And I think that's what they're probably doing with Colin Baker is holding out on his. So
Yeah.
I bet we get another Tom after the first of the year. I bet we get another Tom Baker because I think they want to get, or maybe we'll get Davison first and then another Tom. But I bet we get another Tom Baker next year since they've got to do 7 of those.
Yeah, I
I'm
would
really
imagine
kind of
so.
surprised we haven't got one from Troughton or Hartnell yet.
I'm not, because I think they're still gauging how they're going to do the animated ones. Hartnell might, because I think there's one season that you can get almost everything in now with the animations that we have. So I'm a little surprised we haven't gotten a Hartnell as well. I think they haven't pulled the trigger on the Hartnell ones because I don't think they can market them. I think in their mind they think they're going to be harder to market. So specifically to the U.S. audiences, the U.K. audience would be an easier sell, I think. But here they're just going to get the hardcore fans.
Well, they will. I mean, that's just it in a nutshell. They are going to be harder to market because, okay, it's a science fiction show and it's from the 60s and it's in black and white and it's from the UK. Unless you've heard of Doctor Who and know what it is, you're not going to rush out to stores and go, oh my God, I must have this.
Right.
I mean, there simply isn't a marketing campaign you can put together to convince a non-fan to go buy that.
I think all of Classic Who, there's no marketing campaign that you'll get a non-fan to go purchase.
Yeah, well, that's very true.
Well,
I think you'll be very hard pressed to find some random person that's just going to pick up a random season of Doctor Who and just start.
I think you're, 100% think you're right there, but I think there's also a lot of casual fans, and I think there are some casual fans that wouldn't be willing to dive into classic Doctor Who, but might pick up a Tom Baker season or might pick up a Sylvester McCoy season. So I think there's a variation in the type of people there are. The hardcore fans are going to pick all of them up. A casual fan or a new Who fan may pick one or two up just because they're familiar with those doctors, specifically from New Who. You know, if we've got Sarah Jane they're familiar with, they may go pick up, either a Pertwee or a Tom Baker season featuring Sarah Jane because they liked her. So that sort of thing I think would maybe give a casual fan reason to go back and pick it up. But yeah, there's absolutely no marketing it to somebody that's just going to pick it up and try it for the first time.
The only way that would work is if they managed to either animate or recover Marco Polo, and they could do the first season, because then you could build a whole 60 years of Doctor Who and it all begins here. That's enough of a hook that maybe a casual fan go, well, if I'm going to start, I should start at the beginning.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, well, should I start at the beginning? And a lot of people would be more inclined to pick it up.
That's true.
God, no, don't do that.
On the other hand, I think it's hopeful thinking that they're going to animate Marco Polo. I think we're going to get what we've got. I think we're going to get that truncated recon that they did for the beginning box set. That's what's going to come out on the Blu-ray. I don't think they're going to put the effort into animating a 7-episode arc.
And a historical to boot.
Yeah, I just don't. I really think we're just going to have to write that one off and say, okay, well, this is what we're going to get. Here's what we're getting.
You know me, Glenn. I'm an eternal optimist.
Oh, I know, and I'm glad you are sometimes, Sean. But
so Pertwee had 4 seasons.
Yes.
Okay.
2 with Joe, 1 with Liz, and 1 with Sarah Jane.
Yes.
They were just other than the. You only had 2 with Joe? Maybe it's just because there's so many episodes within those 2 seasons.
Well,
when they're all 7-part stories, it's like, oh, well, okay.
They're about the same amount. What else is in the news, Keith?
Well, speaking of the 50th anniversary of the Master, Misty is getting her own short comic series from Titan Comics. It's going to be a 4-issue story.
It'll be interesting to see how that goes. I like her as a character a lot. I think her strengths, though, happen to be, and I think this was very much illustrated in that that Time Paradox anthology we reviewed. I think she very much is a strong character when the Doctor's there. I just don't know how she's going to be able to hold a comic series on her own unless they plan to feature a Doctor in it with her.
Well, here's the description. Missy wages war on the Doctor, but this time she's not alone. Can the combined brilliance of the 3rd and 12th Doctor avert her deadly scheme, or will she get her hands on a secret weapon capable of wreaking havoc on the universe?
Wait.
Oh, so
3rd and 12th Doctors together?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm on board.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited
As if
now.
just a Missy story wasn't enough. I mean, come on.
Well, I think that's the problem. A Missy story isn't enough without the Doctor. But yeah, that I think that makes it work.
I hate to side with Glenn on anything, but yeah, more excited over the idea of a 312 team up than I am a Missy comic. Oh, the insults will fly. Actually, they probably won't. They'll probably be very complimentary toward each other's dress sense.
I bet they will, because the dress sense is, well, depending on which dress sense we get out of. If we get the coattails and velvet, then yeah, I think they'll absolutely work out well. But if we've got 12 running around in the sweatshirt, I don't think.
Oh God, I don't think sparkly jumper.
Yeah, I don't think the dandy's gonna appreciate that as much. Good stuff.
It kind of moved away from the velvet by the time Missy showed up, didn't he?
Yeah, that's true. Well, he still had the kind of that Nehru coat too, though. I think that would be all right. I mean, it wasn't a traditional Nehru jacket, but kind of that same coat.
I thought it was the other way, because he had the pea coat throughout the first season, and then the jumper kind of.
Well, he always wore that one coat over.
I was going to say
whatever.
I sort of think you're pigeon-toeing him into an outfit a season. It wasn't. He was all over the place.
Oh, yeah, he was all over the place.
All
but
the time.
It very much seemed like it was more into the end of the second, beginning of the third season, when the red velvet look kind of made a what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. That
more
was
regular appearances.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, yeah, that red velvet was late, was mid to late first season anyway. So, but yeah, maybe it made more of a frequency. I'm still excited about the pairing. That'll be a lot of fun, especially since we haven't gotten a lot of Third Doctor in the comics yet either. So,
yeah.
I wonder what they'll dress him in.
Crushed velvet purple coat.
My money's on that split green, split pea soup green.
No art of them, so we don't know yet.
That's true.
Arguably the worst of Pertwee's outfits.
All right, well, should we move on to our discussion for this week?
Yes.
We'll do I think we should do the comics first, probably, because All Flesh is Grass, even though I believe the comics fall in an interlude in All Flesh is Grass. I think we just do those and then tackle the whole book on its own. So
yeah.
Well, this was another outing by the Doctor Who Comic Maker app, and this was another 2 episodes that you could buy for $1 a piece. And what do you guys think of these? Let's start with in order, episode 4, which was the one that featured the Ninth Doctor and Madame
Ikala? I don't know.
Ikala.
Something like that. It was okay.
It's okay.
It's gonna these comics are. Well, I marvel at the fact that they're able to use these and make a cohesive story out of them. There's just never a lot of substance to them. I'm glad they were able to be involved in this, but these wouldn't have been missed if they weren't there, because all of these stories really kind of just work outside of the main arc anyway. So they don't really give anything to the story arc as a whole, except for, I suppose, this one maybe sort of expands on the relationship between her and the Ninth Doctor. I think maybe that's where we're going to, and I think it shows that there's still some trepidation and that she's still not very trusting of the Ninth Doctor, especially since when the thing's going to the shadow creature's going to attack, and he uses the sonic sting. And she thinks that he's going to kill her with it, and that wasn't his intent at all. I think the story is meant to establish their trust and relationship a little better, and I suppose it does that. But overall, it's an unneeded unneeded story.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't contribute anything to like the overarching story or much else. But it is nice to have 9 in a comic, I guess.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it also gives us maybe a something to visualize. At least it did for me because I read them first. Maybe obviously made her look a little more humanoid than she does in here, not as cartoony. But I kind of imagined her with kind of that flyaway hair that she's got and the purple or violet dress that she's wearing. So it sort of gave me an image in my head when I was reading the book for sure.
Yeah.
Sean, what'd you think?
They were there. I'm with you. I kind of marvel at the fact that when you look at them, we could pick it apart and we could talk about how simplistic they are and that there's really no plot and that there's just they're just there. There just really is not much to these. But you have to back up a step and think about the fact that these are app created. Yeah. These are not what I would term a professional comic artist necessarily creating new artwork for this. Right, it's a cut and paste job, and we've thrown something together to fit it into this overarching story. And here's a story. What can you do with it? Well, this one in particular, I felt was very much a weaker link in that chain because it seemed so repetitive. There were so many close-ups of the face and reused elements in order to tell what little story there was. Yeah. But again, it's an app-based comic, so you kind of have to give it a pass and just go, yep.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Well, the next one, on the other hand, I
was pretty impressed by the story.
This next one? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that episode 5 does... It has a little bit more of a complex story structure to it, and I appreciated the fact. And I think the thing that I don't know, and I suppose maybe we could look it up, is the same person writing these. We don't get an accredited author on these, and so I don't know if all of these are being, conceptualized by the same person or not. But this one really has kind of a different scope and flavor to it. And yeah, I'm with you, Keith. I liked the story. I liked the concept of it. It was a little bit, a little deep.
Oh yeah. It's pretty impressive the fact that they're able to tell this sort of story in this format, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Almost too much.
Overall, the story doesn't contribute to the overall Time Lord Victorious really story at all. It's just set during this, so that's kind of the only contribution that has. But everything else, I really don't have any complaints with. I think it does a really good job of telling the story that it tells in a concise manner and has some nice kind of twists and turns to it.
Yeah, there's almost too much in the form of being a complex story for the limitations of the format, because it's such an intriguing. Well, what the heck? There's this person that because obviously there's a house.
There's a modern house in the dark times.
And that's enough to get you excited and immediately start thinking master or it's a TARDIS or what is the deal? What is with this house? And then no, it's even more interesting than that. It's somebody who invented time travel. Oh, and just wound up in the dark times. Okay, yeah, where are we going with this? And you just don't get much of that because, well, again, the limitations of the format. It's not. I would have much preferred this story be given a Big Finish treatment.
I think
there was way more.
I would agree.
Way more could have been done with this,
or a Titan comic story would have been good. Could have fleshed it out.
Oh yeah, that would work well.
Yeah, even staying with the format, that would have been interesting.
Yeah,
I suppose this story does also illustrate the impact of what the Doctor has done, causing this rift.
Yeah, this is another one.
The implications of this.
Yeah, this is another one of those things that's pulled through the fractures. So, I also like how well the 8th and 9th Doctor get along. I think that if the 8th and 9th had or were able to travel together on television and we had the same actors playing, I think that this is what I see. I mean, this is how I feel that they would be together. So that's kind of a nice addition to it as well.
Yeah, they've definitely got a fun camaraderie.
Yeah.
Which then, when we get to the book, creates some interesting things.
Yeah. Well, should we move on to the book?
Yes.
Oh, let's.
Even a Time Lord can't change the past. A wasteland, a dead world. No, there's a biodome rising from the ashes. Here, life teems and flourishes with strange, lush plants and many-winged insects with bright carapaces, and one solitary sentient creature who spends its days talking to the insects and tending this lonely garden. This is Inyat, the last of the Katara. In all flesh is grass, we are transported back to the dark times. The 10th Doctor has sworn to stop the Katara, ending death and bringing life to the universe. But his plan is unraveling. Instead of bringing life, nothing has changed, and all around him people are dying. Death is everywhere. Now he must confront his former selves, one in league with their greatest nemesis, and the other manning a ship of the undead.
Yep.
I don't want to undersell it because I'm not sure what to say about the story. I think I had higher hopes and expectations for where it would go.
Mm-hmm.
But I really came away from it not quite feeling like it did what it set up to do from the first story. I was surprised to have a lot more and early on a lot less confrontation between the Doctors and a lot more of the working together that we got. And I think that also, and correct me if, or maybe point out where this would have been, but we kept hearing James Goss talking about this interlude in part 1 and part 2 of this book, but there was no part 1 and part 2, and it was really kind of hard to determine where this interlude would have been. The only place that I could put what we're calling the interlude of the things that happened, the Mind of Magnos and all of the comic maker app stories would have happened after that meeting of the minds early on in the book, right? When they went their separate ways.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where it happens.
Okay.
It's the resolution of the confrontation between all of them, and they split off, and then they meet back up, because then at that point, there's never all of them alone again. They are always with one or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
There's always some combination.
that was surprisingly early on in the book too. So I was a bit taken back by that, but I mean that's okay. I'm glad that we're on the same page and we kind of agree because I think the other thing I don't like about the book is it's all over the place.
Yep.
It seems manic.
It is. It's very chaotic. There's not a moment where you can kind of catch your breath and figure out where we are and what's going on. And a lot of times we're bouncing back and forth between. And I think this would have worked. I think when was it Uma McCormack who wrote this? I think when she was doing it, she had in her mind. She was visualizing it, I think, as a episode. And I think if you had been doing this as an episode of Doctor Who, I think you would have done that bounce back and forth from scene to scene and cut away and here. And so it feels like she's trying to structure it that way, but it doesn't work for a book because you're not given enough at any time to kind of get your brain wrapped around what's happening now before we're switching to the next thing. And I think this would have served better to do each of these things out in chapters instead of breaking it up within the chapter. And I found it was interesting because Keith warned us last week that the chapters get longer as you go. And I think that's sort of true. But the last chapter, I think it is, it's like all of this stuff's going on within the scope of one or two chapters. And I thought, and they were particularly long. And I thought this really could have served better by breaking some of this up and kind of pacing a little bit of it out. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
You are not wrong. Unless, Keith, you want to go first, because
Go for it.
I fear I'm going to unload on this, and I don't want to.
Well, you unload, and then we can maybe pull back some.
Yeah,
Yes,
I've
chaotic.
got some things I liked about it, so go ahead and do it, so that I can maybe draw us back with some of the higher points.
Okay. Yes, it was chaotic. It vastly was in need of an editor, and not necessarily somebody to cut material, but somebody to assist in the structuring of the material that was present. Because you would get, in order to kind of present the frantic nature of the events, you would get a paragraph or two, which would be with this group of characters, and then you would get a paragraph with that character, and then you would get a paragraph with this character, and then you'd go back to the first character, which I can do. I can track that. Except when I come back to the first character, we are no longer in the same setting
Right.
or time,
Right.
or it's we have now advanced the story, and there was no break. It just kind of was, okay, new paragraph, and whoa, where are we? What happened? And so if this is where those interludes are supposed to fit in, fail. I'm sorry, but they just it didn't work that way. Because of that breakneck pacing that was present throughout the book. You can do that if you're going to give us a rousing adventure story. If you're doing a big action novel, a Clive Cussler or something, you can do that. But that's not what this story was. This story was very much okay, we're going to go in and we're going to bring all the heavy guns, but then we're going to sit and talk about it. And then we really didn't get much of the conversation.
Yeah.
The 10th Doctor flip-flopped on his, he starts off and he's very Time Lord victorious. He is so Time Lord victorious that I kind of began to, especially coming off the end of the other book and into this one, I was beginning to think to myself, I don't know how you walk this back. I really don't know how you can leave this Doctor and go into the Doctor of the next special on television, because he's now, I mean, he's full on in I'm going to go punish the family of blood mode. He's the wrath of the Time Lord. He is there. And so when 8 and 9 show up and attempt to talk him out of it, and we get the side of the conversation from his perspective at the beginning of the book, he kind of goes off on them and is not having any of it. So then we get the meeting of the minds, and he's pretty dismissive and kind of a jerk. Like he's play acting almost. Like he's trying to be nice, but he really isn't. He doesn't have time for these two fools that have come to try and stop him. I'm not trucking with any of this. No. Only to, at some point in time around the middle third of the book, completely change his mind and go, yeah, you're right, I was wrong. I'm not going to apologize for it, but okay, what do we do now?
Yeah, I think that's
and I'm not going to try to undo what I did either.
I think that's
when
the
did
problem.
That happen?
Yeah, that's the problem that I have, is there's no switch. There's no reason for him to turn other than, oh gosh, I think I've done something wrong. And now, to be fair, I can't paint him into this, he did this huge, it's not, yeah, he ignited genocide, but he essentially did, he turned their own device, or quote unquote weapon. It's not really a weapon, but he turned their own weapon back against them is what he did. So I think there's a little bit of forgiveness in that he wasn't just this homicidal maniac that was going to wipe out a race of people, although he was kind of being a homicidal maniac that was going to wipe a race out of people. But I think that sort of softens it a little bit. But I think you're 100% right that I think he's of one state of mind at the beginning of the book, and then he just flips on a dime in the middle third. And I agree, Sean. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, it's just it's such a sudden.
Well, even still, like there's that Minds of Magna story that we had where he's questioning, did I do the right thing?
Right.
we needed a lot more of that or reference to that event so we could be reminded, hey, he's doubting himself here.
Well, that
and there
might have
wasn't
helped
anything.
too. That might have helped to have a break or a interlude, so that when Goss says there's an interlude in the book, that we can kind of look to some of the well, I think Mind of Magnos and maybe Echoes of Extinction. Echoes of Extinction, unfortunately, we suffered from that not being able to come out when it was originally scheduled to come out. So Echoes might also have some interlude effort here to soften that change, because I agree with Keith. I think Minds of Magnus is what they're trying to make serve as that softening, but that backtracking of the 10th Doctor, but unfortunately it doesn't come across that way.
And there's no allusion to it either. I mean, you have to have some sort of allusion. You can't, especially if these are all supposed to be standalone stories that you can dip in and out of as you want. You can't assume somebody's listening to Minds of Magnox.
Exactly.
You have to have a reference
to have that
to it.
moment.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to give us something. Whether it's a, even if you just typed interlude on a page all by itself and then came back and then somebody in the next part said, you've changed since we went to Magnox.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
That was enough. That would have been something in there to give me that. But the book by itself, you don't get it. It's just kind of, it's almost like it's so dependent upon you having read and listened to and experienced everything else associated with Time Lord Victorious, and also knowing where to insert it.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, because there were things that the book was doing that I liked.
Yeah, me too.
The other problem is, quite honestly, and I'm sorry, Glenn, the Daleks. There are far too many Daleks in this vampire story. The vampires are the thrust of what's going on. The vampires and his relationship with Madame Akala and the undead warriors, and how all of that is coming about. You could have given me an entire series of books with the Doctor traveling to the Dark Times and dealing with the vampires. Now, admittedly, it's because I'm a big fan of State of Decay, and I love the Great Vampire Story. But everything with them was more interesting. Everything with the Daleks became very ho-hum, very standard Dalek-y. Yeah, okay, whatever. Until we finally get to the intersection of those two plots.
Right.
And then it became, the Daleks have obtained this. They're going after the vampire DNA. This is now interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it falls down, is because they did. It's almost like they didn't lean into the Daleks enough. I mean, they are the big bad of this. They are the ones that are eventually going to, or they're brought in as the big bags. They're the one that are going to, do this ultimate end, which ultimately is the destruction of Gallifrey in the Dark Times. And so they go all on board with that. And I think that's the right direction to go. I think that was okay to do that, especially since we've been stringing the Daleks along in all these outside stories. We've got to bring them in here somehow. But you're right. They didn't lean into them far enough, so that by the time they do intersect those, we haven't had any of that buildup that was necessary for that climax of, okay, this is what's getting ready to happen. And so I completely agree with you. While I liked the mechanism of them, of the strategist and the scientist bringing the great vampire on board and then utilizing it in order to create this hybrid Dalek, this undead Dalek that was going to, that ends up spreading to the other Daleks. I think it was a great concept. I love the idea, but I agree that they don't lean into it enough to give us that information. And if they're going to focus on the vampires as much as they do, then I agree. I think that they needed to maybe take the story in a different direction and do something more with the vampires instead.
Yeah, it just...
Yeah, and I think I would have much rather of them scaled back the Daleks, and even if they wanted to keep the ultimate end in there, just have them off doing stuff in the background that we don't know entirely sure what it is until we catch wind of what the ultimate end is, and then go after it and explore in the book the vampires and what this means for the universe now that the Keturah are going to be gone, because we don't really ever truly address or resolve that issue. I mean, they are gone, but what does that mean for the universe? There's a few maybe lines of death will just run rampant, however, but if it has always been this way, where the Keturah set lifespans for everything, okay, what does that mean going forward? Does nothing have a lifespan anymore? Does everything have a lifespan? But everything has changed also, so they don't really delve into the meat of any of that.
Well, they try to hand wave it a little bit at the end when the last Keturah dies, and they have this whole metaphor for opening Death's Gate. And I think the idea of that was, once the Keturah were gone, it was destined that they would, because they're not in they're not in our universe or our time. That was eventual, that it was going to happen. And I think that it alluded to the fact that, despite the fact that the 10th Doctor said about their death earlier, the one good Keturah that got fed up with the directives and everything is really kind of the one that set everything back on the normal path. And I don't think that that's explained well enough. And I think that that's also where this book kind of falls down, is it doesn't, you have to kind of reach for your own conclusion as to how this is all fixed, because we know that this is repaired. We know that this is fixed because the 8th Doctor comes back and everything goes, and the 10th Doctor comes back and everything goes in its normal progression of time. But setting up this whole time-altering event with the Time Lord victorious, and then subtly fixing it with some hand-waving at the end, doesn't quite work for the scale of it.
No, it really doesn't, because, had they not done a big time has changed and the universe has changed, well, no, it hasn't. This is how it always has been. It just, the Doctor was involved with it. We just didn't know it.
Right.
If it's the direction the book makes you believe, and then they shouldn't have set it up the way they did. It's one or the other. You can't have, time has changed, but the Doctor was really involved the whole time, so it really hasn't changed. Which is it?
Right,
I mean,
right.
Wibbly wobbly timey-wimey only goes so far.
Right, yeah.
I think that also, if they had implied that in the Dark Times the Daleks were destined to win, and that's why things were like, it wasn't the 10th Doctor's actions that had broken time, that it was the fact that the Daleks were here meddling and trying to eliminate Gallifrey, and the idea that perhaps if they didn't stop the elimination of Gallifrey, that the 8th Doctor and the 9th Doctor were experiencing the repercussions of that. I think that would have been a better way to explain, away the fact that there's this fracture. But just the 10th Doctor coming through wasn't enough, and then the last Keturah dying, setting things in its correct course, just didn't really work for me.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine that in my headcanon, I just feel that had the Daleks disappeared for the middle part of the story, had they shown up with the 8th Doctor and we gotten a meeting, and then the Doctors got together physically, and then the Daleks flew off, and all of a sudden it was like, uh-oh, now what? And we spent the rest of the book dealing with the vampires. And then the Daleks came back at the end with, hey, we've captured this vampire and we're going to Gallifrey to blow it up with this army of undead Daleks. That to me would have been a much bigger reveal, because you could then fit all of the Dalek stories, from within Time Lord Victorious into that gap. So now we know why they're flying around and doing all these things. Like, okay, that makes a little more sense structurally.
Yeah.
It also sets up a much bigger crux at the end for the finale to deal with, as opposed to we've been dealing with the Daleks through this whole story. They've been after something. They've been after this ultimate end. Let's piecemeal that out. No, we don't really need to know that they have a plan.
Yeah.
I mean, they're Daleks. Of course they have a plan.
I think also what doesn't work is it's from the beginning of this arc, and there've been a lot of good stories in this, so I'm not putting down this entire series, but from the beginning of this arc, the Daleks continually are changing their plan.
Yes.
So their goal is this, and then when goal A doesn't work, they move on to goal B. Or if goal A does work, they still move on to goal B, and then they move on to goal C. And it's almost like you're continually evolving their plan. And I think it was almost a cheat. And I think that I didn't. Maybe it was a softer sell that we read the Dalek stories that came with the Eagle Moss stuff, so we had an idea that we were going to get surprised with this Emperor Dalek's ultimate plan. But it just seems like that we're doing this, okay.
Which was just a longer version of that chapter.
Right, that's true. But it just feels like we're just going to continue to move the goalposts out until we get to this point, and then it almost undersells everything that the Daleks had been doing in all of their stories leading up to this. So,
yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, I think they're better off
problem.
having the Cthulhu, the vampires, and the Doctor himself being the villain of the story, other than the Daleks. And the Daleks actually just be a support character as opposed to a main villain.
Just from the standpoint that because of what they did, in my mind, they really weakened the Daleks. They really just kind of, it became, instead of a Dalek story that I was excited about, it became yet another Dalek story. And because, as we've said before, every time they come back, they get beaten. It's you've got to find some new way of making them cool again. Because we know the Doctor's going to win.
The Undead Daleks would have been a cool thing.
That would have been a cool thing.
Had everything around it supported it.
Exactly. That's just it. If that's going to be the crux of the Dalek mission, if that's going to be the big reveal, then I don't need to know all the internal politics, if you will, that led to that. Just let the Daleks be mysterious and then come out with this sucker punch that, we got you. That would have been oh man. So that was a frustration.
And make the resolution of that be much more difficult than what it was.
Yeah.
Make it harder to defeat these undead Daleks than just had the last Kotora do her thing and poof, they're gone.
Well,
that's easy.
Okay with the Deus Ex Machina of the story at the end.
Was too.
Just because it wraps up the Couture storyline and it takes care of this MacGuffin now of what happens when the door to the door of death is opened.
Yeah, I agree.
It kind of takes care of that. Now, I could have used a lot more of not just a ship full of mercenaries and some strange super weapon that Brian found in the closet. That was offensive. That we've got undead Daleks being wiped out by Bob.
Yeah,
and mysterious.
But they weren't really wiped out.
I'm gonna disagree because it wasn't like he had one weapon. He had several. We just expelled a bunch of them at the end of the last book, but it was determined that these were like basically cards up Brian's sleeve. And yeah, it does come down to the last one it's not exactly a weapon, but I liked that. I thought it was very much I can imagine Brian going around the galaxy, collecting all of these different weapons in order to use them later down the line somewhere, and this happens to be where it ends up being. And so I was actually okay with that. I was okay with that, pulling that last weapon out and going, well, I've got this still. I thought that was actually rather funny the way they played that off.
Well, and because that weapon didn't actually kill the undead Daleks,
right?
It just halted them momentarily, and that's when the amazing reveal could have happened of, oh wait, these are vampire hybrids. But we already knew that they were, so it just didn't mean anything.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the other thing that kind of soured me on it was, let me back up. I think that the 10th Doctor, after he makes the turn back, really felt like the 10th Doctor. It's almost like she had his words at that point. And I think that the 8th Doctor was very much in line with how the 8th Doctor should be. So I think that she had both of their voices. The 9th Doctor just did not quite seem like what the 9th Doctor... She just didn't quite have the 9th Doctor. She couldn't nail it. And it feels like the 9th Doctor's going around doing very little in this story, even though there's a lot going on with him. And so that was a struggle too, is I just didn't feel like the 9th Doctor was realized well enough.
Yeah, and that's in many ways, the heart and soul of the story, if we are to believe that we've got the knight, the fool, and the dead, and as I interpreted it, that the Ninth Doctor was meant to be the knight,
Yes.
and the Eighth Doctor is the fool, and the 10th Doctor is the dead because of that. But it could, I don't know, I suppose it could be the Ninth Doctor was the dead because he's running around with the vampire, and the 10th Doctor is the fool because he's screwed everything up.
See, in the final chapter, I got the impression that the dead was the Eighth Doctor for some reason.
Well, no,
And 10th Doctor was
because
the
he was
fool.
passed.
See, it's funny because I got it as the knight was the 10th Doctor, the fool was the 8th Doctor, and the dead was the 9th Doctor. And I don't know why I got that, but it was somehow the way the final chapter painted it for me as well, but maybe I just misinterpreted.
We're going to speak
Maybe
in
that's the point.
allegory.
Maybe they're all of them.
You need to do a better job of it.
Anyway. Yeah, that's true.
But
although that was handed to her, to be fair. I mean, that was the
Okay.
title of the first book, and so I think she was going based on what was set up for that.
But it's very much a matter of, okay, if we're going to play these roles, I'm fine with the Eighth Doctor being the fool because he is the of this set, he is the most exuberant, happy-go-lucky of them.
Yeah.
Okay, I can buy that.
He's the most carefree.
The carefree, sure. The dead being the Ninth Doctor, whether because he is coming fresh off of the Time War and carries that guilt with him, and he's been paired up with the vampire, that could have been a fascinating, really deep character study.
Yeah.
Think of the conversations that they could have had dealing with, as she's trying to understand him and begins to crack that, we could have gotten those Rose conversations where your world burned, didn't it? You were responsible, didn't you? There was so much of that kind of stuff that could have been there, and given the Ninth Doctor something to do. If we're going to pair him up with the vampire, let him do some undead stuff,
Yeah.
And maybe she even makes a perverted offer. We could, if you take me back, I could, I could resurrect them. No, we're not good. We're not doing it. Yeah, there's just the implications of that were so much, and then not realized at all, which is why it felt like he didn't do anything, because he really didn't. He just carried the spider plant back and forth. Yeah. And what was up with the spider plant?
Well, he was pretty much a chauffeur for Madame Iscott too, because, I mean, he gets her to the place with the last Keturah and gives her sort of this. I kind of liked her turn as a character as well. I thought that was well developed. The fact that she's come off of what she was before to where she ends up at the end, and being the one that's going to remain there and be the custodian of this garden that the last Keturah had been over watching over. So I liked that, but then it just makes Nine her personal chauffeur through this whole book.
Well, and another moment where, okay, so the Keturah character is very interesting and has this great evolution, and yet we never get a conversation between her and the Ninth Doctor.
Yeah, which I think would have served.
Which would have been, another, you're more than you are. You can, you don't worry about what you are presently. You feel you're the bringer of death. You do this, but you will become more than that.
Yeah.
You had, look at me. Now I'm a gardener. I do this. And then the 10th Doctor shows up, and the Ninth Doctor is even more despondent because now he's like, yeah, look what I turned into, this guy. There were so many things that they could have done.
Again, it's not our job to rewrite the book either. So
I know it just feels like there was so much potential. You're going to do this story, and it's like I am all on board with how much potential there is for this, and then instead we didn't get any of it. We just got we just got a Dalek story with a couple of vampires and some running around in a spider plant, and that was about it. And it just, the whole thing kind of just was a balloon with the air being let out of it.
Yeah.
And to the point where by the time we got to the end, with the big finale over Gallifrey, I didn't care.
Yeah.
I genuinely didn't care if they saved the planet or not.
I do like the fact that she makes the illusion of the Eighth Doctor and talking about, I really haven't been back in a while. I should pop back in and, if we can go back and see Ramon and that kind of stuff. And the Ninth and 10th Doctor knowing what's to come.
That was a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, those side glances to each other, and it was really emotional at that point.
Yeah,
so
those were the best
well
parts
done.
of the end.
Yeah, that was well done.
Yeah, those were definitely the best parts of the ending.
Yeah, overall, I think there's enough in this that the book is fun. It didn't bore me in any way. It's just I think there were a lot of avenues that it went that I didn't agree with, and I think there were a lot of avenues that I think they could have done better. She could have done better with. But overall, I didn't hate the book. I mean, it was still a fun read, especially when the Doctors are working together. And I think Brian, while I don't think he got enough screen time here, although he did get a lot in the first book, and I kind of expected he would be kind of put on the back burner for this one, but he does have some really great scenes, especially when he goes into the, he's going into the ship and he's deciding that, which side he's going to be on, and he wires himself into the engine room so that, number one, they won't fire at him, and number two, if they do, he's hooked up to the thing so that he'll take the ship out with him. So there are those little, glimpses that we get from Brian's character in the story that work, but there's just, I'm kind of lamenting the fact that there wasn't more Brian to it.
Yeah, and I'm honestly a little, I can't decide if I like the fact that Brian survived or not. And I don't mean that to be disparaging, because I love Brian as a character, and I agree with you. I wish he'd been in more of it. But when he makes this grandiose, I've wired myself to the engines, and you can't shoot me without blowing yourselves up, and I want to talk to you about getting a ride home, and how unfortunate, you've decided to shoot me anyway. And then the Doctor swoops in at the last minute to save him.
And you're thinking, hey, okay. And then the exchange.
I don't know.
Well, then the exchange.
I was prepared for the Daleks to go out in this blaze of glory and Brian to be responsible for it. I was like, that's heroic. He got saved.
Even the rescue, though, it's he says you didn't just come to rescue me. You don't want me to blow up the ship because your TARDIS is still there. And he says, yep. I mean, it's like, well, it kind of made the rescue a bit hollow, because I thought, how nice that he came back to get Brian. Oh no, he came back so that he wouldn't lose his TARDIS.
Yeah, I came back for the TARDIS. And I feel like Brian and 8 needed a stronger resolution to their story. Because, Brian's been hanging out with the 10th Doctor, so they kind of got their farewell. Yeah. But 8 and Brian had been at loggerheads for so long.
I was okay with that too, though, because I knew that he couldn't go back with 8 because we'd read that one, and I also think because he still feels like the 8th Doctor betrayed him, just by dumping him in the dark times. I couldn't see them ever reconciling that, even though he's friendly with the future incarnation of the Doctor. But
a fun moment for him maybe to attempt to kill him.
Yeah.
And the 10th Doctor having to step in and go, no, you can't do that.
I think the 9th and 10th Doctor sort of leaving together after the events, because the 8th Doctor has to obviously get onto the ship so that he can take the Daleks back through the back out of the dark times. But I think the 10th and 9th Doctor leaving pretty much at the same time kind of solidifies my thought that that's the 10th Doctor that's onlooking in the end of the comic story where Rose comes out of the coma. And I said, if you look in those bushes over there, you can see the outline of the 10th Doctor. So I think that's where they were going with that. And I think that that's the reason why this book has them somewhat leaving at the same time, because I have a feeling they left together and he took one more look, at Rose from afar.
I agree.
And then would again later as he regenerates.
And then do it again later.
Creeper.
Well, you guys have anything else you guys want to pick apart about this book? I really wish.
I
wish
feel
it were
like that's
better.
unfair. I'm with you. I wish it were better. There were moments that I enjoyed. A lot of the name drop stuff. The fact that he called the ship the HMS Donna.
Yeah.
That was great and touching. The absurdity of turning a mercenary force into carpenters.
Yeah.
That's right in line with something the Doctor would do. Those moments worked for me, and were done very well. And a lot of the small character moments with 8 and later in the book with 10 worked for me. Actually, I just pretty much across the board, 8 worked for me. Maybe that's just my love of 8.
I would agree. 8 was consistent through this whole book.
Consistent is a good word. Yeah.
And I think she found his voice. I think she wrote him very well.
But 9 was just a of opportunity that didn't come by, and the frantic pacing on top of everything else just really kind of shattered whatever coherency was at present. So mixed bag.
I agree.
All right. Well, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, since we're dealing with time and time fractures and the unmaking of the universe, I thought, and because I'm in charge of the schedule, it's ultimately what I think that counts. I thought it'd be fun to finally tackle Doctor Who Unbound. So, continuing on the U in Unmake, we were going to spring over to Big Finish and do the Doctor Who Unbound series next. So the first 2 stories in that line, Odd Mortality, which it's Auld, A-U-L-D. It's a weird word. And number 2, Sympathy for the Devil, are on the docket for next week. And you have 4 weeks then to finish out. There's 8 stories in that, so we're just going to kind of take them as all one big chunk and go from there with those. So if you're following along at home and would like to stay abreast of what we are doing, you can head over to Big Finish and get your hands on those. And then we have something special planned, because dealing with a gargantuan multi-format, multi-Doctor story, and suddenly a bunch of Doctor Who stories where the Doctor is not the Doctor but is the Doctor, as if that wasn't enough. This is the 50th anniversary of the Master, 2021, and so we have Mucho Master on the horizon.
Mucho Master, I like that.
Mucho Master.
I like that.
And if that's not the title of that episode, I will be extremely
Well, I kind of think each time that we do a Master story, we'll just call it Mucho Master Part 1. Mucho Master
excellent.
Part 2.
Yes.
Well, be sure to follow along on travelingthevortex.com for updates. And if you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some back into it? You can do that by clicking on the Patreon link and consider supporting us. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to the podcast, specifically on Apple Podcasts, because that really does us really well in the ratings to bump us up in the recommendations. And make sure you join the conversation on our listeners forum on Facebook. And I think that's all I have. Do you guys have anything to add before we close it out? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.